This podcast is made possible by you, the supporters of WPLN and WNXP, Nashville Public Radio.
This is the Nash Villager Podcast. It's January 22nd, 2025. On this day in 1973, the Supreme Court issued a pair of landmark decisions that, taken together, made abortion legal in the United States. One, of course, was Roe v. Wade. That challenged the abortion ban that Texas had at the time and raised important questions about how the right to privacy and due process intersected with the state's restrictions against abortion. But the other case that doesn't get mentioned often anymore was Doe v. Bolton. That was a challenge to Georgia's revised abortion ban, which was only a few years old at the time. The law made it a crime to obtain an abortion, with additional criminal penalties for doctors who performed the procedures. And this particular case dealt with the rather complex system Georgia had for deciding if a life was sufficiently at risk to trigger one of the law's few exemptions, and the incredibly detailed requirements for performing an abortion in one of those rare cases that an exemption was granted. The High Court determined that the Georgia law piled on way too many specific requirements, that it went far beyond the way that states generally regulate medical practice, and made both the patient and doctor jump through too many hoops. The Roe v. Wade and Doe v. Bolton decisions were announced together, essentially working as a unit to cover all the legal bases needed to legalize abortion. And that was the way of things until the Dobbs decision was announced in June of 2022, reversing several key aspects of the 1973 rulings and once again making it possible for states to ban the practice. I'm Nina Cardona, and this is your daily digest of what's happening around Middle Tennessee from Nashville Public Radio, WPLN News. Tennessee was one of many states that was poised and ready for the Dobbs decision. Legislators had a trigger law already on the books, and after a few procedural technicalities, it slammed shut the door to most legal abortion in this state by the fall of 2022. The law is one of the strictest in the nation. But it was hardly the end of the story. Tennessee's legislature hasn't stopped working out more details and nuance in these few years since. For example, the very next year, Governor Lee signed a law specifying exceptions in the case of molar or ectopic pregnancies. And of course, opponents of the law took the state to court, too. Back in October, a judge issued a temporary injunction that presses pause on any sanctions for doctors who help end pregnancies that involve a handful of very specific, dangerous conditions, like high risk of a uterine rupture or a cervix that is dilating before the fetus is viable. Interestingly, that case takes great issue with an aspect of Tennessee's current ban that is the exact opposite of the Georgia law involved in the Doe v. Bolton decision. Even though both laws were crafted with the same end goal of limiting almost all abortion, they were written with entirely different strategies for keeping the carve-out narrow. 50-plus years ago, Georgia took the tack of making a system so labyrinthine that it would be almost impossible to check all the right boxes. Tennessee's 21st century approach is to be as vague as possible. Lawyers for the Center for Reproductive Rights argue that puts doctors in a confusing position where they could conceivably make a decision they believe is essential for protecting their patient and then face criminal penalties when the state disagrees with that conclusion. But new bills already filed in this legislative session do get a little more specific, both in measures from Republicans trying to further clamp down on limitations, and ones from Democrats hoping to open up a few slivers of access. One of them is about medication abortions, which some Tennesseans are still obtaining through doctors in states without bans. One of the proposals makes it a crime for drug manufacturers to deliver the medication for use in an abortion. Now, the bill as written does acknowledge that those drugs are also used to treat non-related conditions like stomach ulcers, and tries to say, well, if that's the end purpose for your shipment, then it's okay to send it here. What it doesn't face head-on is the fact that naturally occurring miscarriages are often treated using those drugs. Basically, when a pregnancy ends on its own, the body may need help fully expelling all of the dead tissue. If that isn't taken care of, there's a risk of pain or a potentially dangerous infection. Whether the pregnancy is ending by choice or because of a medical event beyond the patient's control, the same drugs are used to help the same organs do essentially the same task, overseen by the same kind of physicians, no less. So how is this ban on shipping drugs for abortion supposed to be enforced? It's not like the distributors and manufacturers can see from an order form whether the end goal is abortion or treating a miscarriage. That's where this bill gets creative. It says recourse can be sought following the existing law pertaining to wrongful death. That means if this passes, when someone gets a medication abortion, their close family can claim to be a survivor of the fetus and sue the drug makers in civil court. And the bill sets the penalty for the companies at a $5 million fine. Unsurprisingly, patient advocates and healthcare providers are pretty worried that it's going to become hard to get anyone to ship those meds to Tennessee for any cause. Because what if it ends up being used in an abortion and the company gets sued for millions? So that's what some Republicans are hoping to push through the legislature in the next few months. Democrats are renewing attempts to carve out exceptions to the abortion ban for victims of sexual assault and to further clarify what it means to protect the life of the pregnant person. And they're also making another attempt to protect access to contraception and IVF. When this came up before, Republicans said that kind of bill's not necessary because nobody in the state's trying to outlaw those things. But they are certainly related concepts. And conservatives in other states have expanded their focus in that direction. So the proposal would insert language in the abortion ban to clarify that it does not mean devices, medication, or procedures used to prevent pregnancy, and that it doesn't extend to the disposal of frozen embryos. Of course, the legislative session only just started last week, and right now it's on pause as lawmakers prepare for a 2-week special session. It's too early to know which measures will gain traction and which ones committees will decide not to even bother debating. And there's still time for lawmakers to submit even more proposals. In just a few minutes, we've reached the week's midpoint, which means the new edition of What Where Wednesday is coming up after the newscast.
On This is Nashville, we're taking a journey into the identity of this place we call home. The old and the new, the glitzy and the gritty, the monumental and the human. What makes Nashville tick? What makes it unique? And where are we headed as a city? We're going deeper on the day's news, bringing you dynamic conversations and taking you with us out into the community. Join us weekdays at noon. This is Nashville.
Here's the latest from WPLN News. Several mid-state school districts have announced closures or delayed starts today due to the dangerous cold. Those include Cheatham, Dixon, Robertson, Rutherford, and Wilson counties. An email from Rutherford County Schools says the move is very unusual but necessary due to temperatures in the single digits for the first part of the morning. Well, as Nashville's cold spell continues, efforts are underway to keep people warm. The city's emergency overflow shelter will remain throughout the day today and tonight. They typically open when temperatures veer into freezing so workers can provide additional support to primary sheltering options like the rescue mission and room in the inn. The shelter hit an all-season high on Monday night with nearly 400 people staying there. The Office of Emergency Management has also been conducting cold patrols, offering transportation to shelters and bringing things like blankets, gloves, and hand warmers to those who opt to remain outside. Cold weather can also threaten water pipes. As temperatures dropped at the start of this week, Metro Water saw an increase in breaks, and the utility has activated their emergency operations to repair broken pipes as quickly as possible. On his first day in office, President Donald Trump signed a slew of executive orders. One aims to help states like Tennessee secure lethal injection drugs. WPLN health reporter Catherine Sweeney tells us that will be an uphill battle.
Trump says we need to bring back the death penalty. His first administration did just that, after the country paused federal executions for nearly 2 decades. The Bureau of Prisons started using the controversial and hard-to-source drug pentobarbital. Tennessee announced last month that it's pivoting to using that same drug. Pentobarbital is a common medication, but this is a dose that's hundreds of times stronger than what you'd get in a hospital. Its use in lethal injection is controversial because the high concentration could cause lung damage and the feeling of drowning. And it's unclear whether the prisoners are totally unconscious or just unresponsive. Pentobarbital is hard to source because pharmaceutical companies won't sell it for use in the death penalty. That means the federal government and states like Tennessee have to buy raw ingredients from chemical companies and then take those to a lab that mixes them up. One more challenge for the Trump administration: the supplier it used for pentobarbital, a company called Absolute Standards, quit making the drug in 2020. Catherine Sweeney, WPLN News.
President Trump has tapped a Tennessean to join the newly formed Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE. Trump created the committee through an executive order as one of his first acts as president. Tennessee Congressman Tim Burchett of Knoxville will join the DOGE committee, co-led by billionaire Elon Musk. The committee will be tasked with proposing cuts to other areas of the federal government. The charter school network Lead Public Schools is suing Metro Nashville's public school district. The suit represents a falling out between the charter network and the school district. They've been partners since 2010. Previously, 5th through 8th grade students in parts of South Nashville were automatically enrolled in Lead Cameron Middle School unless families chose a different school. Now those students will be enrolled in Margaret Allen Middle School, while the charter will become a choice school. That means students will be enrolled there only if their parents specifically ask for it. A spokesperson for Lead denounced the change. The group says the plan was meant to turn around Allen Middle School, which has low test scores, at the expense of Cameron Middle. Tennessee has about 20 compressor stations scattered around the state. They're basically mini gas turbines that burn some gas to move lots of gas across pipelines. These stations represent a small chunk of Tennessee's total greenhouse gas emissions each year. But as WPLN's Caroline Eggers reports, they sometimes cause pollution spikes.
Compressor stations cause about 3% of Tennessee's total climate pollution from large facilities, so not counting cars or farms. It might not sound like much, but that's equal to the annual emissions of the oil refinery in Memphis. It's even more than the state's entire metal industry. But official reports might not always account for all emissions. Last year, a compressor station near Nashville, owned by Kinder Morgan, leaked a massive amount of methane into the atmosphere. In the first quarter of last year,
the event was one of the largest events in the U.S.
That's James Torito, a methane expert at the nonprofit Clean Air Task Force. He says the methane plume was caught by a satellite, specifically a NASA spectrometer aboard the International Space Station. It's unknown how much gas leaked out, as the satellite only got a single snapshot over a few weeks period. But we do know the rate methane leaked out per hour. And
just that hour alone is almost the equivalent of about 200 cars on the road in a given year.
Historically, leaks in the oil and gas sector have usually been missed. 2 years ago, the same compressor station had an explosion, yet that moment in time was not caught on camera. But that's about to change. Torito says new satellites launched specifically to catch big polluters will soon be sharing data publicly.
We're entering a kind of world of transparency. The next year or two is really going to open our eyes up to what is happening around the world.
To stop further warming of the planet, oil and gas infrastructure eventually has to phase out. But in the meantime, catching system leaks is an easy way to cut pollution. Caroline Eggers, WPLN News.
Chattanooga will receive upwards of $1 million for a train yard that serves as a transportation hub for cities across the Southeast. The grant is part of a larger investment the Federal Railroad Administration is making in railroad crossings nationwide. Chattanooga was one of 123 projects selected to receive a portion of the $1.1 billion allocated nationally. Chattanooga will be required to cover 20% of the project's cost. You'll find more news anytime at WPLN.org. If you found yourself asking why Nashville has a full-scale replica of the Parthenon, some musicians in town would suggest that's the wrong question. Instead, they would say, the question is how to best take advantage of the really unique acoustics of that classically proportioned space.
I'm Marquise Munson, here with another edition of Nashville Public Radio's What Where Wednesday, keeping you up to date with the happenings in Nashville this week. Live music opportunities range from MJ Linderman at Brooklyn Bowl on Saturday to Hello from the Hills happening at City Winery on Sunday and Hippocampus at the Ryman on Tuesday. For more events, head over to WNXP.org/events.
No time to apologize for the things you do.
This week for What We're Wednesdays, we discuss the Echo Chamber music series at the Parthenon. It's happening this Sunday with 2 more shows in February and March.
My name is Justin Tam, and I'm the Vice President of Development and Park Partnerships at Centennial Park Conservancy, and I also produce the Echo Chamber Music Series. The Centennial Park Conservancy is a public-private partnership with Metro Parks, and within Metro Parks, they have Centennial Park as well as the Parthenon. And so as a support group, we support a lot of programs like that you may know, like Musicians Corner, all the arts and education programming in the Parthenon, a youth education program called Kidsville, Nashville Earth Day Festival, as well as all the revitalization efforts in the park. So activating the space as well as revitalizing it has always been a big priority for the organization. And so we started out actually in 1985 as a support group just for the Parthenon. And over the years, the museum, as well as the team here at Centennial Park Conservancy, has wanted to figure out a way to do a music series in this incredible space. If you've never been in, the ceilings are 43 feet high, and the Athena statue is actually 42 feet high. So she is large and in charge and absolutely beautiful. And so it is this majestic temple that's a beautiful space that is a one-to-one replica of the Parthenon in Greece. And so it's an amazing treasure that we have, but inside, because it's all hard surfaces, for those audio nerds out there, the reverb decay time, so how long it takes for sound to disappear, would be about 6 seconds long. So it's a really challenging environment for musicians to perform in. You're basically in a fishbowl of audio. We thought, well, what sounds good bathed in reverb? String music, vocals, horns, things that are legato, sort of longer notes instead of short, loud staccato. We thought, what if we created a place-based series that leaned into that challenge? And so this idea for Echo was born. And we started out in 2019. Lachlan Strings, which is an organization run by Lydia Luce, was the first ensemble to do it with us, and they've had a showcase every year since. And we had composers arrange and create music to premiere in the space. So the music is actually tailor-made for the Parthenon or arranged with it in mind.
Don't you leave it to me, 'cause I'm living off your breath and your blood. Who's gonna turn the lights out?
Curating the series is really a joy. I don't think I truly understood before being involved with this series what an incredible community of composers live in Nashville. You know, Nashville's a songwriting town. We all know that. But in terms of arranging string music and choral works, there are so many ensembles that are nonprofit organizations themselves in this city that I was not aware of going into this that are doing absolutely incredible art. We are hosting Sister Strings for the first time, which I'm super excited about. If you don't know about them, they have been touring with Brandi Carlile for years. They recently performed at the Holiday Bowl with Joni Mitchell. And then like a couple weeks later, did a performance with Metallica. I don't think there's anything that these sisters can't do. So we're really excited to host them. They're playing their own original music, and it's the first time they've performed at the series. So that one should be really fun coming up here. And then in February, we've got Lachlan Strings coming back. Lachlan Strings does this all over the world. They've done it in Paris. They've done it in London. They started in Lydia's living room in East Nashville and have done it at the Blue Room and just a bunch of incredible spaces. And so we host them every year because it's typically several songwriters as well as composers. So this year, we're excited to say that we have Langhorne Slim performing, Devin Gilfillian, as well as Lydia Luce. And then on the composer side, we have Jordan Lenning, as well as Rowan Merrill. In March, we are hosting the Fist Jubilee Singers for the first time, which is absolutely incredible. My understanding is that they actually performed at the 1897 exhibition, which is sort of why the park exists. It was a centennial celebration of the state. So to have that sort of heritage and connection with the Fist Jubilee Singers and to have them come back for the 5th season here, it's really meaningful to host them.
For more information about the Echo Chamber series and other events happening this week, visit WNXP.org. I'm Marquise Munson, and thank you for listening to another edition of What Were Wednesdays.
Music is like magic, because it can change you with a couple sound waves. You get the feeling in your body that makes you dance.
Thanks for listening to the Nashvillager podcast. We take this look at Nashville news every weekday. If you like it, go ahead and subscribe on your favorite podcasting app and tell a friend or give us a mention on your socials. It really helps get the word out. And of course, everything at WPLN News is listener supported. You can become a member at WPLN.org. And that's it for today. Thanks so much for listening. Let's make this day a good one, and we'll catch back up tomorrow.